Hey guys, thanks so much for stopping by. My name's Austin. Today we are taking a look at the CT Toys version of Mafex's Batman Hush number 126. This is the black and gray variant. This is CT Toys' most recent release and one that I've been very excited for. I think that they really pulled it off exceptionally well. The Hush design for Mafex is one of their best, if not their best, Batman. And I have the blue and gray version. Never really picked up the black and gray, so it's nice to have the really cool base edition done. So CT Toys is a third-party company or a bootleg company that has kind of branched off into Mess Toys, where they're now making third-party figures. But this is still, CT is still their bootleg knockoff type thing. But they make probably the best bootlegs on the market, and at least for my money, they are almost always worth a pickup. And this one, I'm going to spoil it, is no different, but we're going to go through it. This is straight out of the box. I haven't done anything to fix the figure. KOs usually need some kind of fixing, but this one, I wanted to show you guys what it's like just straight out the box. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of the review, the actual figure himself, let's take a look at the box. We'll go ahead and move the statue out of the way, or gargoyle. It's not a statue. I guess it's a statue of a bird. Anyways, all right, we're rambling. So the box art is mostly the same as a Mafex, but I do think that this is kind of reworked to fit CT's aesthetic, and I really do like it. It's definitely reworked in the way that it says Bayman Ayush. So that's cool. And then on the top, it says Bayman Hush, so pretty solid there. You know what I'm realizing? Batman just covers up the rest of the H. Yeah, it definitely says Bayman, so they're really avoiding using that, but it does say Hush. So the Bayman is not as noticeable as the Ayush, so that's a relief. But either way, box art is solid. Really like the figure photography on the side. I love it when a company uses the actual figure for the art, because sometimes the artwork can kind of work against the figure, but in this case it's kind of showing the best effects. It is showing a very heavily shaded version of the figure that, as we look at it, does not quite live up to that. But to be honest, I don't know that even the Mafex original did. So anyways, we'll get into it. It shows you kind of the accessories that you get. The top, pretty much the same, just picture of the figure. Legalese on the bottom, and that's about it. So we'll go ahead and get right into the aesthetics now. Aesthetically, getting right into it, he really does match up well with the Hush figure, and that is a good thing. Hush has some of the best proportions from what I've seen. I don't think I have a Batman in my collection that I like more than this, at least from a comics perspective. I know that InArt and LPZZ, I know for sure LPZZ, I'm not sure if maybe InArt has not shown Hush figures yet, but I think they did. Basically, this figure and the Mafex figure are going to be getting competition. That's awesome. I'm all for competition. I do think that this version of Batman will always have a place in my shelf or my collection. It is just such a solid look. The sculpting just across the board. Mafex has a tendency sometimes to go kind of soft with their musculature because, they're going for that kind of anime look, and I have no problem with that on a lot of figures. In fact, it looks really good on Spider-Man, a more lithe, acrobatic guy. But for Batman, you really do want the bulky proportions, and to me, this captures Jim Lee perfectly. The head sculpt is on point. If we really get close in with it, the paintwork on this is, it's not 100% perfect. It is, of course, a knockoff. You can see a little bit of over, painting over the line. I think for a knockoff, this is, I don't think you could ask for more. This figure was $30, which is a little bit more than CT charges or has charged in the past. I think that's still fair for this figure because of the big chunk of plastic and how well that's done, which we'll get into with accessories. But yeah, you could probably charge a little bit less it might be pushing it for a knockoff, but I personally would be happy to pay Marvel Legends pricing, which Marvel Legends are going up to 27, so I'm saying $3 more for this, for the quality of the sculpt, the paintwork. I mean, these boots are clean. The lines are very clean. I ignore the cat the cat hair that I have on there. That's embarrassing. The cape as well. I haven't had the original blue and gray cape for a long time. I have a third party on there because the original one, while the material used was great, it was a little bit too big. And as much as I did like it, it started to kind of fall apart. The wire popped out from here, and one of the wires in the cape was coming off. But what I do know for sure is the black and gray Hush Batman kind of changed the finish. So either way, I wouldn't really be familiar with the Mafex version, but I will say this is a really, really solid cape. If this cape, like if putting it this way, if I bought this as a third-party cape to attach to my Hush Batman, I would be perfectly happy with it. The two criticisms I would say is there is a little thread here that could be snipped. There's a little bit of unclean on the inside of the cape where that stitching ends. And then I would like to have seen a third or a fifth wire in the middle at the very least. The 4 wires you get do allow you to hit some dynamic poses with it, so it's not the end of the world, but perfect world, I would prefer a wire going through the middle to give you a little bit more structural integrity. But other than that, I mean, there's not much to say aesthetically on this. It's a very simple Batman design, but if you know the Mafex Hush figure, this does it pretty much perfectly. One thing before I move on to accessories, you can kind of see the little the little silver dots that they use for their joints. Used to, that was more visible. They're kind of getting better about hiding them on these newer figures. They're still there, but they're not crazy noticeable. You can hear a little bit of the squeaking in that joint. But anyways, I think that's pretty much it for aesthetics. It's really solid. It doesn't quite have the amount of shading that you see on the box, but as we go into comparisons, we'll kind of talk about the Mafex version as well and see how that stacks up. But I think overall, pretty much perfect aesthetics on this guy. So now we'll go ahead and look at the accessories. Starting off with the accessories, you have the alt head. The blue and gray Hush came with a unmasked Bruce Wayne neck and head sculpt. The black and gray did not. I think that was kind of a trade-off for the gargoyle base. That's kind of a bummer. I would have really liked to have that unmasked head, especially considering I got mine third party and I was, aftermarket, I wasn't able to get the Bruce Wayne head sculpt with it. So, it would have been cool to have that. But it's also worth noting Hush, there's too many names. CT Toys is doing their version of the Mafex Hush blue and gray. So that will have the unmasked head, which is pretty exciting, especially if you weren't able to pick up the blue and gray. That's my preferred look for Hush Batman. But anyways, this is the kind of angry sculpt. Again, the paintwork on this is exceptionally well done. It does a great job of looking like the inside of his mouth, kind of more the gums rather than him having lipstick. Very subtle. The eyes are dotted really, really well. There's a little bit of scuffage on the chin, which, isn't great. I could probably clean that up if I felt like it. It doesn't really bother me. From a distance, it's not very noticeable at all. It kind of just looks like a little scuff on him, which, Batman is not known for being totally clean all the time. But yeah, really well done. The nose is clearly picked out there with the flesh tone. So really good alt head. Then you get a collection of batarangs, 4 in total. You get 2 of this batarang and 2 of this. These are both accurate to the Hush series. This is kind of the way that Jim Lee draws the batarangs a little bit more commonly, which he did draw them this way in Hush. But he also has these, I think this might be like attached to a rope. I can't remember off the top of my head. I personally prefer this. I've never much liked the batarangs that just are like a bat, which might be counterintuitive, but I like them when they're a little bit more aerodynamic and stylized like this. But besides that, the paintwork on them is super good. You can see how well it's reflecting the light. They shimmer, they look like metal pieces. Really, really well done. Also very cleanly cut. This one has a little bit of a ledge there. The other one does not have that. So I picked this one up just to be able to point that out. So the other one's just a little bit cleaner, but even with that little nick, it's really not a problem. And then both of these are very clean sculpts. So really like both of those battering options. Then in terms of batterings, if we want to go over to the hand options, you get this. Every hand that I talk about, there's two of them. If I forget to say that, apologies. You get this kind of, he's holding, shuriken style batterings in his fist. I'm not sure if this was done in Hush. I can't remember again off the top of my head. I think it was, but I also know for a fact I've seen Jim Lee do it before. So it might just be, depending on where I saw it. But this is a very Batman thing. I'm really glad to have it. And it is very cleanly picked out. If you look, you can see a little bit of overspray onto the hands, but I don't think that that's noticeable at all from a distance. I don't really think it's going to show up on your shelf if you decide to display it with these, but very cool Wolverine style. Then you get the kind of relaxed walking, normal hands. Again, really like the sculpt on these, very solidly done. There's not a lot of surface detail. It's pretty much just a straight black glove. But there's nothing wrong with that. That's pretty standard for Batman. So not a lot of texture, but doesn't bother me. Then you get a set of kind of more expressive jumping at you, like a kind of a grab or just a more expressive, excited hand. Really like this. Then, you get pair fists. You got to have fists. In fact, the fists came on the figure. I switched them out. With these, which are super cool, they are batarang holding hands where you can fit multiple batarangs, but I also just really like them as a tighter, relaxed hand. It's really cool to get options like this where you can really dial in a pose as you see fit. While we've got him over here, a bit of a concern with Mafex figures, especially ones that don't come with the little runners for the hands. This is the wrong fist, but we're gonna just go with it. They do come on and off cleanly. They're not overly tight. Some of them are a little bit tighter than others, but they pretty much come on and off super easy and don't fight you very much. So really like that. But yeah, you get fists and some kind of relaxed-ish hands. Then you get a really cool additional option, which I think Mafex pretty much includes with all of their Batman releases, where he's kind of gripping the cape. And this works great. You just slot the wire in there and he's holding it. You can also kind of make that work with the grappling gun as well if you want to. I don't really know why you would, but maybe he's pulling on the line. But yeah, pretty good little slight gripping hand. It's easy to get it mixed up with the fists, though. So that is all you have in terms of regular hands. Then you get kind of another accessory holding hand. This is his grapnel gun. You get a pair of these as well. Really well sculpted. I like how the thumb kind of looks like it's about to push the actuator or eject button, whatever you want to call it. Again, very well painted. I'm gonna say that's probably overspray on there. It's really hard to tell if that's like him just gripping the handle. Either way, it's really not noticeable, but that is something to be aware of, something to look at. There's a little dot in there, as you can see, and that is super useful for the last two accessories. You can attach this little shoot, hook attachment comes out. Pretty cool. It's on a very stiff wire, so it's not a bendy wire, but that's kind of better because I don't really like the spoolie kind of wire. I like it to be straight like that, so I like that. You get the short one, and then you get the long one. Pretty exciting stuff. That is plenty long. In my experience, this is a little bit too much. I don't really ever display it with this because it just, or on my blue and gray, because it's just kind of heavy and it, has a tendency to droop on your shelf over time. It also just takes up a ton of shelf space, and I am not made of shelf space. Something I will say, though, the hook is very clean on the other one, but on this one, if I can get it to be okay with focusing, it's very bent up. It's kind of flattened out a little bit. I think that just happened in shipping the way that it was packaged. So kind of a bummer on that, but it doesn't really ruin the look of it. It still looks like a hook, and it would be easy enough to flatten this out. Just throw it in some hot water and it'll probably come back to shape. And if it doesn't, it'll be malleable. You can malleate it. That's definitely a real word. Then onto the main event for most people, myself included, you get the gargoyle base. It comes with, this is more CT Toys style base rather than the Mafex kind of clamp, but both of them are very solid. Something I really like about CT Toys and Mafex is they have little screws in there so you can tighten them up for however you need it. If you need a looser fit, something you can move around a little bit more, you can loosen it up. If you need him stuck in the air, and really need as much strength as you can, just tighten it up. But looking at the actual base, I'm going to pop the claw off of here so that we can focus in on the base. Love the texture, love the paint. The paintwork on this, it has a little bit of a dry brush. It really brings out that texture. I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be glazing this figure for most of the review. I think it really earns that. It is just exceptionally well done. There's a good heft to this. It's solid plastic. I mean, obviously not like solid in the way that it's completely solid all the way through, but I mean, there's even detail work on the underside of it. So if you're doing figure photography and you put this on something and you're trying to get a picture from upside down, it's just, I mean, it is probably one of the best things I've ever seen from a straight knockoff company. Really, really well done. Really, really like having it, and it works great as a display piece. So that's pretty much all we've got in terms of accessories. By no means is that a disappointing thing, though. That is plenty of accessories for Batman. But now we'll go ahead and get into the articulation. Articulation on the CT Toys Black and Gray Batman is, I would say, for a knockoff, pretty much the best you can get. For an import level action figure, there might be a few fixes you want to do to get it, on par with a Mafex release. But anyways, just going straight into it. Head is on a double ball peg, so I think it's also, let me just pop the head off real quick so we can see. Oh, it's actually, you know what? It's a pretty deeply inset peg, but it is one of their kind of crooked dumbbell pegs, dumbbell joint, there we go, which I do really like. I will say it's kind of a soft click. You can't really even tell when it's fully clicked in, so that's not the best thing in the world, but it really doesn't impede articulation or anything like that, so it doesn't bother me. He can look up that far, and that's without fiddling with the crooked dumbbell peg, so probably could look up a little bit further if you fought with it, but even that being said, that's pretty much all you need. Then he can look down very, very far, again, because of that joint. It allows him to really bury the chin. Gives you an idea of what it would look like if you were to swap them. He does have a ball peg at the base of the neck, which does not come off. It's probably a little bit tighter on this guy because he's not designed to have a swappable neck the way that blue and gray is. I could be completely wrong on that, though. That might be cope. Anyways, engaging the neck joint, he can bury even further. Even more of a sad boy. Really, really effective. Really like that. It doesn't really get you much further back, though. It pretty much doesn't engage because you've got the back plate that kind of gets in the way. So not the end of the world. It's always nice to have that. You can obviously get full all the way around if you want to do the Exorcist. He's got great tilt. A lot of attitude on this. I will say, I'm not going to dock it for this little cape attachment. My blue and gray Batman doesn't have this anymore. I took it off, so mine is a little bit less limited in that way, but this is a Mafex knockoff, and Mafex put it with this, so I'm not going to really dock it points for copying that design. But anyways, really good side to side on that. Very natural. Really glad that they followed the method. Then you come down, if we can move the cape out of the way, you get Mafex's style of butterfly hinge, which it's a little bit more natural of a hinge. You can hear the creaking. It is a third-party figure, so some joints could benefit from being oiled. I'm a little bit lazy. I'm probably not going to do it. It doesn't bother me to hear it creaking all the time. I've never had one of these break. As soon as I do, I'm probably going to be really mad at myself for not going the extra effort. But anyways, very solid forward and back on that. Looks about as natural as you can make a butterfly joint look. It might just be me, but I actually really like the way that Mafex does it. It obviously is a visible joint, but not in a way that's bad, in my opinion. Then the shoulder can go pretty good neutral. which is a struggle for some figures, so it's good that it's not for him. Engaging both that little, rotator cuff type thing and the shoulder, you can get up way over 90. Very solid, very happy with that. Then you go back down, you can get all the rotation you need. He's a little bit creakier than I remember. I've been playing with this figure for, about a week or so, but anyways, he is creaky, so he still follows that CC Toy style. Anyways, you got the bicep swivel. It can go all the way around if you want it to. Not sure why you would, but it can. So really good. You get double jointed elbow, which he does have a very meaty bicep, which is going to limit your crunch a little bit, but still pretty good. Pretty clean joint there. CT Toys seems to use kind of smaller joints, I think, as a way to save a little bit of money, and it does end up creating more gappage than I think you get on a traditional Mafex, but it's really not that noticeable. Not a problem for me. This is a very smooth joint on this figure. It's probably not as deep as maybe we could have gotten, but I mean, that is a big bicep, so no complaints here. Then down at the wrist, you have a very standard import style wrist ball. It can hinge in and out, up and down, whatever you need it to do. It can rotate 360 degrees. This is a very standard type of articulation for import figures, and I think it should be the standard for all action figures, at least at a certain price point. It is really good, and I really like it. So that's solid. Then getting down to the chest, you have a floating belt that is separate from the crotch piece, so that's good. You can kind of get it out of the way. It does mean that it sometimes kind of moves around in areas that you don't really necessarily want it to, but to me, more articulation, more display options are a good thing, and I will take something that's a little bit finicky for that purpose. We have a double ball in the chest, which is very good. I'm going to see if I can just engage the upper diaphragm. He can go back. It's kind of tough. They want to work in tandem, and I think that's because the diaphragm joint is tighter than the ab crunch. But anyways, or not ab crunch, but you know what I mean. He can go back that far with just the upper body, which is really solid. He can crunch in, also pretty solid with just that upper joint, so pretty good. Then just the lower one. Now I got to try not to engage the legs. He can go that far forward, and he can go that far back. And then when you engage both of them, he's got, let's see what we can do. There we go. I'm just going to break him in half. He can do the limbo pretty well. Not too shabby. Then when we kind of rock it forward, I will say his chest is definitely going to be the place that gets the oil as soon as I can do that, because it is very creaky and it is very tight. But he can crunch forward super far. Really, really like that. Very deep bend. Very happy with that. And he can go a little bit further. I have kind of popped the joint off by overworking it, but it comes right back on, doesn't cause any problems. Going down to the crotch section now, we have drop down hips, which allows him to kick forward. How far? You know, for drop down hips, it's not quite as far as you might think. It's about 90. The leg kind of has a natural dip down, so it's not the best, especially considering drop downs, but not the worst either. He can kick back before you start moving outward about that far, so that's really good. Better than a lot of figures can. It keeps it pretty natural. Well, let me actually straighten it out. And yeah, still pretty far considering the fact that he does have a butt on him, so no biggie on that. Kind of not really expecting it to go too far back. His splits, though, pretty solid. About as far as you're going to need him to. He probably could go further if he was engineered a little bit differently, but this is pretty much as you're going to need for a Batman. He's not doing the Van Damme, but no biggie on that. Then we get down to the knee. We can have him kick in pretty good. Not super amazing. You know, it's not winning any awards, but it's good enough. It's getting the job done. It's not as gappy as some CT joints have been, so very solid. Not really going to complain about that. I will say, I think Mafex could probably improve on their comic Batman, their kind of classic Batman. It's getting a little bit long in the tooth. The Night Crusader release has a very similar articulation scheme. But anyways, then getting down to the ankle, you have the same kind of import style where you can hinge them very, very far back. Really, really like that. You can hinge them forward, a little bit less, not quite as impressive. And then a front-facing pin where you can go inward more than you can really go out because it has that little block on it. Not a huge fan of that, but I get that it keeps the sculpt, keeps it looking mostly clean. And then you have toe articulation, which is pretty solid. It's a little loose on that one, tighter on this one, so a little bit more usable on that side. I, for one, don't really use toe articulation without some kind of support to make sure that it doesn't fall. But anyways, altogether, the articulation on this guy, I would say, is very, very solid. You're probably going to want to oil up some joints when you get him, but not to the extent that some CT releases have needed, and definitely not to the extent that a lot of knockoffs have needed. So the articulation, all in all, is exceptionally good for this guy. I'm very happy with it. But now we will get on to comparisons. So starting off the comparisons, we have the Mafex Hush releases that I have collected so far. I unfortunately don't have Nightwing, which I would really love to have been able to include in this review. I really want that Nightwing, but he's a little bit expensive for what he comes with, so still kind of looking for a good deal on him. Anyways, just some housekeeping. This is a third-party cape. As I said earlier, I took the little collar off, so his neck articulation is much more expressive, and in my opinion, it just looks better. I like it when the neck or the cape kind of naturally flows into the neck, but the actual scaling of him for a knockoff release is exceptionally well done. It usually you kind of have to accept that a knockoff figure is scaled down, and it has been the case for CT Toys, but they have done something to where they are able to keep it in scale and make a quality product and charge a lot less for it. And it kind of asks the question of whether or not these companies are price gouging us, because these guys are able to put it out at a cheaper price point. Another thing to note that I do appreciate, and it might be more of a saving money, but the finishes on these are very different. I was kind of expecting everything to be the same except for the blue and black, but the gray actually works really well with the black on this release, and then the kind of more orangish belt, and then the yellow and the darker, deeper gray works really well with the darker blue. So I appreciate the difference in design, and it really is going to work well to have them both on the same shelf with each other. Then that being said, the Mafex Superman looks great with both of them. Arguably looks better with this one because, the blues kind of clash a little bit between these two, but either way, all three look great. That's all I've got for these guys. So then we have, here is the amazing Yamaguchi Revoltech Arkham Knight Batman and the InArt 1/12 Studio Dark Knight Rises Batman. I don't know why I forgot the name Dark Knight Rises. It's pretty standard stuff. These guys scale a little bit more interestingly. I pretty much just wanted to bring out all of the 6-inch scaled Batmen that you might want to compare him to, because McFarlane is obviously 7-inch scale. He's not going to fit that very well. But these guys, it's been criticized about him fairly that Arkham Knight Batman is a little bit stumpy from Revoltech. I've heard that LPZZ has a much better scaled Arkham Knight Batman. I would like to pick him up if he ever becomes a price range that I can justify buying after getting this guy. But the InArt Dark Knight Rises Batman is really well scaled overall. His dimensions are really accurate to a human being. He looks like a human being. This Hush Batman is maybe a little bit more muscular, but other than that, they scale really well together and feel pretty cohesive, aside from the fact that this is, comic book, video game, movie. But anyways, that's pretty much all I've got for comparisons on these guys. All in all, as he is a KO, you wouldn't expect him to scale as well as he does, but he turned out to be a 1-to-1 scale with the blue and gray Hush. So really happy about that. And now we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Wrapping up my review now on the CT Toys Mafex Batman Black and Gray number 126. This is an exceptionally good release from CT. It helps that it's a great release to start with from Mafex, but I think that CT has kind of set a new standard for themselves and for knockoff, third party companies. It really doesn't do anything wrong. It has some creaky joints. It has some aged engineering that is just a result of it knocking off a figure that has aged engineering. There's a thread on the cape. The cape could have had an extra wire. There's that one little bit of overspray on the mask. Everything that I could criticize about this guy feels like nitpicking. They nailed the gargoyle base. I think they knew that that was kind of a big sell for a lot of people, and they put a lot of effort into it. They really just did a great job through and through on this guy. The most he needs is maybe a pair of scissors to cut that thread and some silicone grease to just kind of loosen up a few of the joints. If you want to, you don't even really need to get the fullest out of this guy, but to make it absolutely perfect, that's all you got to do. So I do a ranking system here. It goes first grade, high grade, real grade, master grade, perfect grade. This guy, it might be a little bit contentious, but I am going to go perfect grade on this release. If this makes sense, the Mafex version of the Black and Gray Hush would have actually been a master grade. It has a few too many issues. And yes, it's not a perfect figure as far as CT Toys goes, but as far as CT Toys past releases and collecting knockoff figures as a whole, this really does set a new standard in quality, and that's what perfect grade is supposed to mean. It means the pinnacle. It is the newest thing to beat in its area. And again, guys, this is a $30 figure that is really standing alone in its area, and CT Toys is just continually improving, continually knocking it out of the park. And I'm excited to see what we're gonna get next from these guys, because they really did excel with this one. So I'm excited to see what's next, but that's pretty much all I've got for you guys today. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like, comment, share it with other people, all that fun stuff. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.